Going back in time, of course, when I was 10 years old and when I was coming back from school, was the first time I was watching how a vehicle was being, repaired, how the vehicles used to be opened. Basically, I was passing by a garage, and that is where the vehicles used to be repaired there. Of course, at that point in time, Ambassador was the most complex machine on wheels, going on roads, as well as Vespa. And what interested me was the way these were opened, repaired, and then put back together. And I was curious to know how these thousands of parts were going into this mechanical gadget. When I came home, interestingly, then I thought, let me try opening something at home. And I decided the most complex product we had at home that point in time, other than my toys, was a radio. Obviously, the radio which we used to hear music, and I realized that I can open this and see what's happening inside that. Of course, my mother was not at all happy because at the end of it, the radio had some issues. When I put it back, it never worked. But what I learned was it was much more complex than the car, and this curiosity continued in me to know how these electronic products work. One of the next following days, I went to another shop, which was a radio shop, radio repair shop, and tried to see what happens in these products. Unlike today's time, where we, of course, go back to YouTube and try to watch how things work, that point in time, the easiest thing was to go to a neighboring shop and ask them, and the mechanic there tried to explain day by day. Almost every evening on the way back from school, I used to go to this radio shop and find out what's happening on the electronics, and he used to repair every day a different product. And each one of them happened to a mechatronic product. There's some amount of mechanics, there's a lot of electronics in it, and this is where my journey started as an electronics engineer for automotive. Of course, after my schooling, I went on to NITK Surathkal, and that is where I did my engineering in electronics and communication. And most of the times in the classroom, of course, I used to learn a lot of theory, but my interesting times are more in the labs, where we used to go and also work in a hobby workshop where I was able to access machines. In fact, I was doing more mechanical designs and using lathe and many other machines rather than the electronic shop itself, because that was where it was much easier for me to learn things. After this exciting journey as becoming an electronics engineer is when I joined Bosch and got into development of various complex products in machines, and that is where my interest began. This was the setting of the journey of my career, and I didn't realize at that point in time where I would be and what are the diverse areas I could actually manage. Today, of course, what is constant is the change. Things have evolved dramatically, and if you look at around what has happened in mobility, it's a huge amount of change that has happened, moving from mechanical car, which was hardly had any electronics at that point in time, now going into products which are heavy with electronics and a lot of software. The transformation is what we see in the industry, and the IoT is what we believe will happen in all the products. With sensors becoming much cheaper, I think all of us as engineers know about it, and connectivity is seamless. A lot of data gets collected from the sensors, and a combination of that, as you know, we call it as IoT. The Internet of Things are where electronics are connected with the mechanical products, and a lot of data happens and control happens. And at Bosch as well, we use this to seamlessly develop solutions to make mobility much seamless, to make it safer, to make it more greener and comfortable, of course. When India was transforming in terms of having more and more paved roads, at Bosch, we were actually working on IoT products to bring them onto these vehicles. And that is where the transformation of the mobility started. The very first product when we started to develop for mobility, we were not aware about what needs to be developed and how complex are these systems. I would take back in time, in 1990, when I was working in Bosch, that time it was called Myco, we were developing controllers for machines. Of course, for us, software development was more of an art, and there was actually a lot of discussion whether software development is an art or is it engineering. In 1990, on Valentine's Day, there was an air crash in Bangalore. I don't think any one of you would have born there, or I do not know whether you're aware about it. That was the only air crash that happened in Bangalore till now, and luckily so. And one of the German engineers who had visited India that time to look at or scout around to say, can we develop electronics and software for Bosch out of India, was the conversation. And this engineer actually met some engineers at Bosch that time in India, and I was one of them. And he explained to me that, or explained to the team, The reason for this air crash in Bangalore was simply because of failure of fly-by-wire. Obviously, the fly-by-wire had failed in this, and he said this is what is happening in mobility as well. There are a lot of electronics that are going to come in mobility, and if there is single failure in this electronics, you are going to have a crash of your car, you would not be able to control it, and this is what we mean by engineering, and would you be able to do this? Of course, our confidence level that time was very, very low because we were able to develop software and hardware for our machines, but that is where we are doing more of trial and error, but here it's not so. You need to ensure that you have zero defects finally in the product that goes out, and that was the main message he was trying to convey, and I'm happy that we were able to actually start our development from 1990, and I was part of that journey at Bosch in India. Now, of course, with the AI coming into IoT, we are talking about AIoT, artificial intelligence coming into IoT products. We are talking about, tires which are talking. We are talking about engines that are connected, the tires which can actually communicate and tell when this needs to be changed and when there is a failure, engines that can keep tuning continuously, and the performance of this engine can be over the lifetime, ensure that it's able to fulfill the emission norms, for example. Also, in addition to optimization, it can also tell when to change the oil. Typically, you may be knowing that engines, we typically say, okay, in 5,000 kilometers, you change the oil, but you really don't know whether you use the oil effectively, and from environment, we know that we have to minimize the resource usage as much as possible. But by AIoT, we are able to do this in these systems, and these are the complex systems we started developing. So mobility is transforming, and AIoT is here to stay, and that is where we believe that things will move forward. Initial age of engineering was more about mechatronics. It was a combination of hardware, software put together. And now it's transforming completely. The industries where we used to develop the mechanical products and adding electronics and then, of course, software control is it. Today, you see more of the industries moving completely away from this. You see some companies which are doing millions of dollars or billions purely from software. While on the background, you need definitely some mechatronic product in the real time, in the real world. But the companies itself are transforming, and as you see here, what we believe is the future companies need not be necessarily only mechatronics. At Bosch, we used to have a room full of mechatronic engineers, and I myself as well. But today we see a transformation there. What we need is most of the time even pure software developers who are able to develop such solutions for these vehicles. Of course, we use more and more technology. We talk about, say, Gen AI. I think many of you are aware about ChatGPT. You'll use it for a lot of your assignments, I'm sure, at engineering. And this is what will actually transform the way we develop. Of course, as a disclaimer for today's presentation and talk, I'm not using ChatGPT. I'm doing it from my own thoughts and ideas, what I would like to convey. The mechatronics engineering, which is going more into software engineering, is one trend. But at the core, what is important is system knowledge. You still need to know what is happening on the background. You need to know what actually makes a difference for these products which you bring into the market. So we are talking about, no doubt, usage of AI on the product as well as to develop a product. In fact, last week I was at CES 2024. Every single speaker on the podium, as well as the product when they were explaining, I never had any chance to hear anything where they talked about no AI in that product. Every person talks that every product has some form of or shape of AI to make these products smarter. And this is something which is changing, but at the same time we should be aware that we should be understanding the overall system working and how what goes behind it, even though we are able to use new technologies like AI. Embracing change is a need of the hour, of course. The technology is changing so fast, and it's at the same time it's important they're able to not only track it, but able to actually use it in what the form we are using it in our domains. By nature, actually I'm an introvert. When I was at Bosch, I started as a DIY person. I was more of do-it-yourself. I used to develop products at home as well. I had a workshop. And even in Bosch, when I started off, I was more of an individual contributor. But of course, as time passed by and we were having larger teams to develop the products, what was more important was to work as a team And that is where we had to change how I would also manage these activities. And as a leader, it's even more important how you communicate and work as a team. Collaboration is the key when you talk about development across the globe as well. And what didn't strike me in the beginning was how much difference it makes in terms of also intercultural differences. The way we work in India versus how we work with Germany or Japan. We have to tune ourselves to ensure that as a team we are able to be collectively successful, and that is where intercultural differences also came or at least played a big role, and we had to tune ourselves to work with various intercultural teams. With the times, of course, of changing, I have been also transforming the way I manage, the way I lead teams, as well as to work with various technologies. And to help this, in fact, I had to actually have a reverse mentor. In Bosch, we have a concept of reverse mentor. Okay, the reverse word is actually not a misnomer, because it basically means we have an engineer who has joined the company maybe 2 or 3 years back, but has full knowledge of what is happening in the market out there in terms of expectations of the youngsters as well as in terms of technology. And this is what helped me also to actually understand this as a part of the work. And these are changes that are happening on the leadership which we need to do to work, to be able to work and interact across the teams, across the, teams across the company itself, and especially with the current generation of kids that are coming into the company. Now, going back to Bosch itself, what changed also is how we started off at Bosch, which actually was because of the cost arbitrage, where we started as a service setup, where some of the engineers from India used to develop part of the software, right? But over time, things have changed. Now we are able to develop products, complete product development out of India, which of course needed expertise, not just on the technology, but also in terms of the competency that's needed and the ability to work in a multicultural aspect, as well as the teams which are distributed across the globe. But at any given time, to do this transformation, it is not just the engineering capability, it's also the capability to work and program manage such complex things, and that is what we have learned over time. And the engineering part, actually, once you take care of, the next aspect is obviously with respect to how we are able to understand the requirements that are needed for the market. That is where we talk about innovation. Typically, we mix this with invention because we think that we can invent some product, but if this product is not necessarily needed for the market and we are not able to connect it to the customers, is where the problem starts. And that is where we talk about innovation, and connecting and understanding the customer need was the key. And that is where we changed quite a lot in Bosch, where we are happily doing engineering, and many times we are proud about the technology we use, but many times we miss the point in terms of how we are able to fulfill the end customer requirements. And this is where I'm talking about developing products which are very specifically needed, not just for India, but across the globe. Of course, when we started product engineering to do end-to-end in India, one of the first successes we had was developing the common rail system for Scorpio, which was the Mahindra product, and obviously many more vehicles after that. But that was the state of the art that time, and the need was to fulfill the cost requirements, or the pricing that was needed, ensuring that we fulfill the emission norms, but it has to be developed from scratch, and that is where we had to develop the mechanical product, the hardware, and the software itself. Beyond that, of course, now we went ahead and developed many other products, whether it's braking that's needed, ABS or ESP, and one of the complex products was connectivity for, like I said, connecting the engines. One of the customers like Cummins, worldwide all the engines are connected, we collect a lot of data. But the most complex part of that is this electronics is more like a mobile phone, which each one of us carry, sitting on the engine. You can imagine the vibration and the other complexity that comes up and the temperature that's there. But this hardware has to still continue transferring data, and the engines are continuously optimized. And this is where we had a lot of failures in the beginning. So we learned from these failures. And it's very clear that we had long delays in this project in the beginning, but after having run such a complex project, where then we put all our minds into it and made it a success, we are now confident in India to develop very complex products, even for ADAS, for example, for a high compute platform. ADAS, as you know, is a combination of a lot of sensors like video, radar, etc., to sense around the vehicle and to able to actually change the way the vehicles run. The vehicles are able to communicate with each other, optimize itself, and go forward. And obviously, ADAS for developing country was much, I mean, developed nations is much easier. We had developed the algorithm from India, but when we went back to try this on Indian road, it was not so simple. You can imagine that the camera was detecting, for example, a cow that was moving as two people. And obviously it checked two legs and said, okay, two legs and two legs, two people walking, which means the vehicle can probably go in between. But that's not the case, right? I mean, you have to detect that as a cow. And these were the improvements that we had to do on our system, and we are quite successful in doing such complex development. Now, when we go through all this in professional life, obviously it is most to do with technology, and on the side, of course, the leadership, as I mentioned. But we have to be also mindful, and holistic lifestyle is most important. And that is what I have been trying to do at my private time as well. And I do a lot of things for to making sustainability at home as well. I managed to put solar electric for ensuring power, to have groundwater recharge because we get a lot of rain in Bangalore, for example, and also drip irrigation for my gardening because gardening is one of my hobbies. And these I was able to invest time on during the weekends, and I'm proud that we are more or less carbon neutral. In fact, we generate now grow more fruits as well as power, which we are able to share with the neighbors as well. And I think these are simple things that can be done, and I was proud that we are able to do it, and also exchange this information with other friends who are also trying to do the same thing, which I'm happy about. Of course, health is also very important. I try to go on morning walks, and I'm happy that I was able to learn meditation and Reiki from my wife, Hema. And with this, as I'm very grateful to her because these are things as an engineer, I was not able to relate it. But I think I realized these are most important in life as well to have a healthy and balanced life. Of course, meanwhile, I've moved on from gardening to doing even weekend farming. And I think if you look at my LinkedIn post, you'll realize what I try on the weekends. Looking at that, of course, it's important that we have to transform the way we do agriculture, especially to go more organic. The amount of fertilizers and chemicals we use, obviously we need to limit it. And I think the pressure the farmers have, I realized it's not that easy, and that is something which needs to be transformed as well. So to conclude on my side, I think what I would like to communicate on the transformation side, which is most important, and as we pass by, it's important to remain curious, like I started off with the vehicle, what I mentioned. And beyond curiosity, it's also to know how things work. For an engineer, unless you understand how things work, is not possible to actually solve real life problems in the world. Only then you'll be able to actually develop products, even though things are moving, as I mentioned, from mechatronics to software. But unless you are understanding the system very well, I think it's not possible. Second is, unless your fundamentals are strong, I think it's very difficult to develop any products. At the same time, it's not necessary that you know everything. As long as you're able to network with other people who know other things and you're able to complement each other, I think is when you'll be able to develop extremely innovative products which are needed for this world. And that is how I would believe that you can start learning. Simple thing, the mobile phone we carry, the number of sensors is at and how it operates is very important to understand as an engineer. How does it sense? For example, you have a pedometer application. How does this pedometer app work? Which are the sensors it uses? And how does the display work? And why do we talk about 4G to 5G in future? These are aspects which are something which from technology you need to understand. And once you get into fundamentals, I think this becomes very easy. Unfortunately, I think some cases we have stopped doing it, and that is something we need to do even in engineering, to go to core engineering to understand what's happening in every product. So to create the future, it's not just to be a consumer. You have to go beyond consuming technology, but also be a creator and create technology that can actually make this world a better place to live in. And that is what I would like to message. And also as an individual, I think it's important to look at beyond technology and beyond engineering to have a happy life and learn from each other and use networking skills to understand and optimize yourself in the whole world we live in.